Here's a logic puzzle to get you thinking this morning. You may want to write this down. There are 3 caves. One of the caves has a dragon in it, one of the caves has a princess in it, and one of the caves is empty. Each cave has a sign above it, but only the sign above the cave that the princess is in is true. So wherever the princess is, the thing right above her is the only statement that's true, and the other 2 are false. Can you use that rule to figure out which cave has the dragon in it, which cave has the princess in it, and which cave is empty? Later on, I'll show you how.
We will use vinegar and baking soda reaction to see how the amount of reactants influence the amount of products that are being formed. As you can see, we have equal amount of vinegar in all of these bottles. We also have baking soda inside these balloons, which have been secured on the top of these bottles. So I'm going to show you how to fill the balloon with baking soda. For that, you require a funnel, baking soda, and balloon, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch the balloon and secure it on the neck of the funnel. I need 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So I'm going to pour 2 teaspoons of baking soda over the funnel. Alright. I'm going to make sure all of the baking soda makes its way through the funnel into the balloon. Now I'm going to remove my funnel and I'm going to go ahead and secure my balloon on the top of this bottle. Alright. So I'm going to be extra careful so that I don't let this bottle tip over, and that's the reason I stood up. Alright, so now my balloon is secured. As you can see, all my bottles are ready for the reaction. Before I go ahead and do the reaction, I would like to emphasize on the fact that this reaction results in the production of carbon dioxide, which gets captured by these balloons, and as a result the balloons inflate. So by measuring the size of the balloon, we can measure the relative amounts of carbon dioxide that's being produced. So let's go ahead and get started with the reaction. I'm going to release all the baking soda into the bottle. As I'm doing so, I'm making sure that I'm letting all the baking soda drop into the bottle. As you can see, some of the reactants are going into the balloon, which is not a problem at all because they're going to make their way down into the bottle eventually. So I'm going to shake these bottles a little bit to make sure that all the reactants are mixed thoroughly so that the reaction proceeds to completion. Alright, since the reaction is taking a little longer, I'm going to wait till the reaction proceeds to completion before I make my final observations. Right, so before I can discuss my results with you, I would like to plan my meal or my lunch. So I have found bread, cheese, and patty. So clearly I can make sandwiches for lunch today. Alright, so 2 bread slices, 1 slice of cheese, and 1 patty can give us 1 sandwich. So if I were to write down this recipe in the form of an equation, like we do in chemical reactions, it's gonna look something like this. So 2 bread slices, 1 slice of cheese, and 1 patty is gonna give us 1 sandwich. So I foraged through my refrigerator and I found 6 bread slices and 6 cheese slices and 5 patties. As you can see, since 2 bread slices give me 1 sandwich, I can potentially get 3 sandwiches from 6 bread slices. Similarly, from cheese, 6 cheese slices, I can get 6 sandwiches since the ratio between cheese and sandwich is 1:1. And likewise, from 5 patties, I can potentially get 5 sandwiches simply because the ratio between these two is 1:1. Well, as soon as I start making sandwiches and I end up making 3 sandwiches, I realize that I have run out of bread and I cannot make any more sandwiches. So clearly, bread is my limiting reagent because it limits the number of sandwiches that I can make. So I can consider bread as my limiting ingredient because it does not allow me to make any more sandwiches. Now, if I look at cheese slices and patty, on the other hand, I'm going to see that I have some leftover cheese slices after I'm done making 3 sandwiches. So I'm going to have 3 cheese slices, which will be left over. And then similarly, I will have 2 patties, which will remain unconsumed after my sandwiches are being made. And so clearly, the cheese and patties, they are my excess ingredients because they are more than what I can consume in this reaction. So limiting ingredient, which is my bread, is something that gets consumed completely in the production of your product, right? And it's the limiting ingredient that determines the amount of product that's formed. So clearly it's the bread that determines how many sandwiches get made. Similarly, excess ingredient is something that does not get consumed completely, just like cheese slices and patties. And excess ingredient does not determine the amount of product formed. So even though we had 6 cheese slices, we did not end up making 6 sandwiches simply because we didn't have enough of bread. So it's the limiting ingredient that drives any process. So let's switch gears and talk about the reaction that we observed some time back. So the reaction we observed can be written down in the form of a chemical equation that would look like this. So vinegar and baking soda, they react to produce sodium acetate, water, and carbon dioxide. Now it is this carbon dioxide that actually got collected in the balloons, making the balloons inflate. Now if I were to represent these molecules, vinegar and baking soda, in the form of Legos, then this is how the molecules are going to look like. And if I look at this chart, it gives me clearly what represent which elements. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and sodium are represented by blue, yellow, red, and white Legos respectively. So I want you to look at this molecule closely. As you can see, carbon is bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms. So I have 3 yellow Legos which represent hydrogen bonded to carbon, which in turn is bonded to another carbon, which is a blue Lego, And then I have two oxygens which are represented by red Legos, and then the terminal atom is hydrogen. So similarly, the other molecule is also being formed in the same way. Now what happens is, in a chemical reaction, when we mix vinegar and baking soda together, the molecules, they collide with each other. And as they collide, the chemical bonds that's holding these atoms together, those bonds, they break. And that makes the atoms fall apart. And as the atoms fall apart, they rearrange and they form new substances as a result of rearrangement. And so those new substances would look something like this. All right, if all the reactants get consumed in a chemical reaction, then we are only going to be left with these products, which are sodium acetate, water, and carbon dioxide. Now, we know that one molecule of vinegar reacts with one molecule of baking soda to give me one molecule of sodium acetate, one molecule of water, and one molecule of carbon dioxide. We know that because of the coefficients. Now, coefficients are the number that are present or that are there in front of the chemical formulas. So these numbers give us the ratio of the molecules, or they give us molar ratios. So coefficients, they give molar ratio of reactants and products. So for instance, one molecule, so when you don't have any number, that means you have one, which means one molecule of vinegar reacts with one molecule of baking soda. So clearly, the molar ratio or the molecular ratio of vinegar and baking soda is 1:1. Similarly, one molecule of vinegar produces one molecule of carbon dioxide. So the molar ratio between vinegar and carbon dioxide will be 1:1. Likewise, one molecule of baking soda is going to give one molecule of CO2. So clearly, coefficients give us the molar ratio, and that's really the basis of stoichiometric calculations. Now imagine, instead of one molecule of each, if we have 3 molecules of baking soda and one molecule of vinegar, right? In that situation, this one molecule of vinegar will end up reacting with this one molecule of baking soda. They're going to combine and give us the end products, which are sodium acetate, carbon dioxide, and water. And so once the reaction is complete, we're going to realize that we are left with certain molecules of baking soda, or 2 molecules of baking soda to be specific. And so in this situation, or in this reaction, in this scenario, baking soda is the excess reagent. It is the excess reagent because we have too much of this baking soda, and so much that it's left over. Whereas vinegar will be considered as the limiting reagent, and simply because vinegar has been consumed completely, and it's the amount of vinegar that determines the amount of product. So one molecule of vinegar is giving us one molecule of carbon dioxide, right? So clearly, vinegar is a limiting reagent, which means that, and this is how a limiting reagent would be defined. Limiting reagent is something that gets completely consumed in a reaction, and it's the limiting reagent that determines the amount of product. So it basically limits the reaction, and it determines the amount of product that's being formed. Whereas excess reagent does not get completely consumed in the reaction, and it does not influence the amount of product that can be formed. So in this case, baking soda is clearly the excess reagent. So I hope you are ready to apply your understanding of limiting and excess reagent and to the experiment, to the analysis of the experiment that we are about to do. This is how the balloons look like soon after the reaction was over. And this is how they look 30 minutes after the reaction. I hope you noticed that the first balloon is completely deflated and the remaining balloons are much smaller in size. And that's because some of the carbon dioxide from this balloon, it got dissolved within the liquid in the bottle. Good thing I took photos soon after the experiment was over. It's very important in science that we collect evidence in the form of diagrams, photos, images, charts, etc. when conducting an experiment. Now, if you remember, I use equal amounts of vinegar in all these reactions. In fact, I use 1 cup of vinegar for all these reactions. It was only the amount of baking soda that was varied. In fact, I used incremental amount of baking soda starting from half teaspoon to all the way to 5 teaspoons. So now we're going to examine our results. First, I would like to examine reaction 5 and 6. These are the last two reactions. Now, in these two reaction mixes, if you observe, you will notice that there is some leftover baking soda. That means the baking soda was not completely consumed within the reaction, indicating that baking soda is our excess reagent. So clearly, for reaction 5 and 6, baking soda is an excess reagent. Now, in this reaction, there are only two reactants or two reagents, which are vinegar and baking soda. And if one of the reagent is in an excess, then the other reagent should be a limiting reagent. So by that logic, vinegar should be a limiting reagent. So since vinegar is a limiting reagent, and we already came to that conclusion, and we know we use the same amount of vinegar in all these reactions, therefore the amount of CO2 produced should be the same, because we know that it's the limiting reagent that regulates the amount of product that's being formed. So lo and behold, this is exactly what we see. We see the balloons for reaction in 5 and 6 are strikingly the same size. So for reaction 5 and 6, vinegar is a limiting reagent and baking soda is an excess reagent. It's important in science that we compile our observations and findings in the form of a table. Now let's examine first for reaction mixes. If you notice, these reaction mixes, they all look clear, indicating that all the baking soda within these reaction mixes got consumed completely, and therefore we don't see any leftover baking soda. This means baking soda could be a limiting reagent. If you recall, limiting reagent is the one that gets completely consumed. So it could be a limiting reagent, but we are not 100% sure yet. Now let's compare the size of the balloons for reaction 1 to 4, right? I see that sizes of balloons are increasing. Remember, they all receive the same amount of vinegar, and it's only the amount of baking soda that was varied, right? They received increasing amount of baking soda. And so it somehow implies that baking soda is somehow regulating the amount of CO2 that's being produced. So clearly baking soda is influencing the amount of CO2 that's being produced, because as it increases, the size of the balloons also increase. So if you remember, limiting reagent is the one that regulates the amount of product formed, and therefore it's safe to conclude at this point that baking soda is in fact a limiting reagent for reaction 1 to 4, and therefore vinegar should be the excess reagent. So now let's get back to our observation table and fill in our findings. Well, I'm still not settled with my initial findings for reaction 4, and that's because of some conflicting observations. When I look at reaction 4, it does not have any leftover baking soda, just like reaction 1, 2, and 3. On the other hand, the size of the balloon for reaction 4 is strikingly similar to the size of the balloon for reaction 5 and 6. Now, since reaction 5 and 6 have excess baking soda, that means these reactions must have completely consumed all the vinegar they have, which was 1 cup vinegar, to produce CO2. So really, the size of balloon for reaction 5 and 6 is the maximum size that can be obtained from 1 cup of vinegar. And now, since reaction 4 makes the same size of balloon as reaction 5 and 6, it too must have consumed all of its vinegar. This implies that in reaction 4, baking soda and vinegar must be present in almost perfect ratio of 1 to 1. And therefore, both vinegar and baking soda get consumed completely. What that means is in reaction 4, none of the reagents are limiting. So I went back to my observation table to make those corrections for reaction 4. And it's absolutely okay to do so, because really science is the process of seeking the truth. Even if we have to go back multiple times to change our conclusions, it's okay to do so as long as we follow the scientific process. So after all, why do we need to know if a reactant is limiting or not? Well, we may not realize, but there are all kinds of reactions that our lives are dependent on. And so really knowing what is limiting these reactions helps us improve the efficiency of those reactions. For example, ammonia is produced to make fertilizers. And we all know fertilizers are required to grow plants, crops, vegetables, and even grass, right? Now, ammonia is generated by mixing hydrogen and nitrogen gases together. And so if one of these gases become limiting, then the production of ammonia will be impacted adversely. Therefore, identifying the limiting reagent and adjusting the amounts of those reactants or reagents allows us to improve the production of ammonia. Therefore, it's very important to know what's limiting a reaction. There are many more examples of important reactions that impact us directly or indirectly. So I hope next time when you observe a reaction, you're going to think what's limiting it.
I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'm in the Fulton, Memphis area.
My wife and I and our 3 boys live in Edgewater.
I live in the Lakeshore Collinwood Arts District.
I live in Camps Corner area
I've lived in the West Park neighborhood for 21 years.
for 5 years.
I've lived in Cleveland all my life.
37 years,
Majority of my life.
All my life.
18 years.
Cleveland's great. I mean, I love that there's always stuff to do. There's so many free things to do with kids.
Best city in the country. I love it. I mean, it's a good city. The school system is awesome.
I think Cleveland schools are making great progress. New things are happening at CMSD, you know, I want to be a part of that.
So the Cleveland Plan was legislation that was put in place in 2012 to be able to transform Cleveland's public schools.
The change in the school district in the last 10 years is one that's focused on high performance, that's focused on providing school choice for families so they can figure out what school is best for them, and moving into a period where we're acknowledging that education needs need to change for our students, for our economy, for our families, and how do we meet families where they are to do that.
The schools offer far more choices. They're more career-oriented.
All kids don't learn the same, all kids aren't interested in the same things. I like the fact that we do have those choices.
If your child needs a particular approach or needs in the kind of classroom to help meet their growth, I think the Cleveland Plan is about providing those options too.
I've just been really happy with the preschool here. I'm just so grateful that I found this school and that my child is here.
It's nice. It's very nice to know I can choose what school. I can have my options of going to each building and seeing what is the best choice for my kids.
When I did research, I was looking for the best schools that Cleveland had to offer.
The teachers are great. They work well with us. They constantly keep in communication with us, and that's really the key, is like that we're all involved.
It's nice to walk into a school and have them know who you are.
The structure of the academics is very, very rigorous, and I love it.
I am a 2016 graduate of Cleveland Early College High School on the John Hay campus. Choice for me was great because I had the opportunity to really take ownership of my education.
The high school graduation push and the increase is definitely a result of what the district is doing in order for the schools to thrive, because now you have better schools, quality schools, and when you can push that, students see that you care about them. Now they begin to care about their education.
We stand with 117 private colleges that are going to offer every student in the public school system of Cleveland, Ohio, free college tuition.
Say Yes to Education is an initiative in our city which offers wraparound support services to students and their families so that students can be most successful in their K-12 education. Probably the biggest headline of Say Yes is that it's going to offer last dollar tuition scholarships to students to any public 2 or 4 year institution, as well as accredited Pell-eligible career and technical trainings.
Families at this point have no choice to say that, oh, my child, I can't afford college, or I'm not going to send my child to college, because that opportunity is there.
The barriers, the social, economic, demographic, all of the things that especially a lot of urban kids have to endure, which prevents a lot of them from prospering, are definitely minimized.
It's amazing. I couldn't be happier with the way Cleveland is moving up.
We are doing what we set out to do in 2012 with the Cleveland Plan. We are actually seeing results, and that's a great thing. It's an incredible accomplishment. We don't see this kind of growth in the urban district elsewhere in this country.
The children are the future. Anything that we do, we have to plan for them to get a great education, a quality education that is technologically advanced so that they're prepared. And with that preparation, you can't stop us. Cannot stop us. So look out every other city, because Cleveland is on their way.
Hi everyone, it's Andres Howard, Mrs. Howard here again from Lincoln West School of Science and Health. This week on my segment, I would like to focus on rhetorical devices and how we use rhetoric. And especially how we use rhetoric in our everyday lives when we're dealing with our families, with people around us, and even in the classroom. So I hope you enjoy and think of creative ways that you could use rhetoric or rhetorical devices every day. Hello everyone, so today we are going to look at rhetorical devices. Now, when you think about rhetorical devices, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of rhetoric or rhetoric? Rhetoric is our root word. Yes, as you can see, the definition is there. Rhetoric is techniques or language used to convey a point or convince an audience. So you know right now, as you are home alone, and it's getting warmer outside, and you are trying to convince your mother or your father to let you out of the house to go play football, basketball, or just to walk to the store, you are using a form of rhetoric or some form of a rhetorical device. I'm going to take you through today the 3 types of rhetorical devices that you use when you are trying to convince someone of something. Keep in mind the 3 different ones that you use often depend on what you are trying to get out of that person. Let's see. The rhetorical triangle. So we have 3 types of rhetorical devices. We have logos, which is your logic, your reasoning, your proof. So this is when you're being very logical, you have your evidence, and you're trying to convince them to say, hey, this is what I want to say, this is how I feel. These are the reasons behind what I feel. So it can be an example of logos would be a structured speech. So you know how we have presidential debates or the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. Those are forms of logos. They have reasons, they have logic, and it appeals to you. They often reference to studies, statistics, and case studies. So let's say we're thinking about, I really want to go to the art museum. The reason I want to go to the art museum because more than likely it's going to make me a better artist. Keep in mind these are hypothetical. It's going to make me a better artist. If I see, I might get inspired by some things, and these are kind of like proofs of this is your reason behind your persuasion. And you also have comparisons, analogies, and metaphors. So you can compare yourself to, well, hey, if I hear Beethoven, maybe I'll be Beethoven. Or if I see a Picasso, maybe I'll paint like a Picasso. This is an example of logic, reason, and proof. So then you have your logos. The next one is going to be ethos. Ethos is your credibility, your trust. How credible are you? So when you're asking your parents, hey, can I go to the store? What is the likelihood that you're going straight to the store and coming back? How credible are you? Do you have trust? So this is where you have developed a trust with that person. So personal branding, personally, have I demonstrated to you that I'm a trustworthy person? Confidence. How confident are you in your delivery? How do I know that I can trust you? Is your speech persuasive enough? And cites credible sources. Again, even though in logos you have to have credible sources, ethos you also have credible sources. The more credible you are, the more believable you are. And I feel like that is an example of all of the things that you have to think about when you have a rhetorical device. The next one is pathos. This is when you appeal to their emotions. And you get those crocodile tears like, but please, I've just been in the house all this time. And you really want to get out of the house. This is where you're going to appeal to their emotions and their values. So you're going to tell a story. And it's like, hey, a kid who was in the house all day, they completely lost their mind. And then they drove everybody in the house crazy. An example of a story. You find inspirational quotes. And you have vivid language. So you're very animated. You're very lively at what you're trying to say because you want to appeal to that person's heartstrings. You're pulling at them. Pulling because you want that. So the 3 rhetorical devices we have are logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is logic and reason. Ethos is your credibility and trust. Pathos is where you appeal to their emotions. So let's look a little bit more deeply into pathos. So pathos, again, equals emotions. So it's attached to what you are speaking about. It also taps into the emotions of your audience and your readers. So it has sympathy, empathy, like it really just makes you be like, "Aww," or like, "Oh my God, I want to cry," or you know what, that really makes me upset. I feel like we should do something about it. It creates different things inside of you. Using pathos effectively can override logic in the audience and the readers. So if you're trying to persuade someone and you appeal to their emotions, you can probably oversight their logic. And it does not rely too heavily on pathos as the emotional override can wear off. So we're going to look at an example. So we have about 3 videos here. The first one we're going to look at is pathos.
Charmin Ultra Soft.
It's softer than ever. Charmin Ultra Soft is twice as absorbent, so you can use less. And it's softer than ever, so it's harder to resist.
You'll always be my lover till the end of time.
Okay, this is getting a little weird. We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
So pathos, Charmin Ultra Soft toilet paper. This is how it appeals to our pathos. It's very cute and cuddly. The bear family has given human characteristics, and its purpose is to tug at our heartstrings. How did that make you feel? Did that make you feel warm and fuzzy? It makes me feel warm and fuzzy. It makes me want to go buy Charmin, as a matter of fact. And next we have ethos. So ethos is it refers to your character, right? How trustworthy are you, or credibility of the writer or the speaker? How credible are you? Let's give an example, because I have high school students. If you are frequently going to the restroom at every single class period, how credible or how can I trust that you're really going, or you're not going to go make see your friends, go to your locker, text on the phone, or be on your headphones? How do I know that I can trust you? Where is it at? Ethos is built through honesty. So you have to be honest. In order to build that trust and credibility, you have to be honest. You can say, "Hey, Mrs. Howard, I've had a long day. I really need," now this very works rarely because you can't use this a lot, but I have had a long day. I'm not really feeling well today. I need to go to the restroom. I know that, hey, you probably don't go frequently. And B, like, you're probably really having a hard day for you to even come and say that to me. It's very mature of you. Yes, I'm going to send you to the bathroom. You use honesty, and now I trust you. You've built some type of credibility with me. Same for your parents. If you tell your parents, like, "Hey, I want to go to my friend Keisha's house," and they're going to have to trust that you're really going to Keisha's house, so you're not going around the corner to be somewhere that you're not supposed to be. Trust, credibility starts with honesty. So let's look we have another example. Let's finish our video. Ethos is ethical appeal is means to convince your audience.
In Austin, it's 60 degrees with a... Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning, causing a
Alexa
wave
lost her voice? How is that even possible?
We have the replacements ready. Just say the word.
And you're sure this is gonna work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you...
Alexa, how far is Mars?
Oh, how far is Mars? Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never been there. This guy want to go to Mars. For what? There's not even oxygen there.
Alexa, set the mood.
Now setting the mood. You're in the bush, and you're just so dirty, and you're so sweaty, because it's hot in that bush.
Alexa, reboot.
Alexa, play some country music.
I don't dance now. I make money move.
No, Alexa, country music.
I be in and out them banks so much I know they tired of me.
Alexa, call Brandon.
I'm afraid Brandon is a little tied up. But do let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Jessica? Good boy.
Thanks, guys, but I'll take it from here.
So it has a lot of celebrities, as we can see. But would you trust every celebrity with all this advice? Like, I mean, trust me, I love Cardi B. But I wouldn't trust Cardi B to give me a lot of directions because I don't feel like she's all-knowing. So I probably would not purchase an Alexa if I knew that she was gonna be kind of like null and void, and now I have to use celebrity advice. So it doesn't appeal to me. Like, I don't trust her. Again, ethos is about trustworthy and honesty. I don't trust that a celebrity is going to give me the best advice. The next and last one is logos. Okay, so logos is argument. Oh my God, this is actually my favorite one. Teenagers love to argue. You all love to argue, and I enjoy actually having a debate with you because at least you're going to try to craft it in a very sophisticated way. You're going to use academic language. You're going to find facts and research. Debate is like my favorite thing to teach because you get so passionate about it, yet you learn so much because one, you're learning how to do research, you're learning how to use your voice and articulate what you're saying in a very educated way. You use a lot of academic language. It's amazing. So logos is an argument based on facts, evidence, and reason. Using logos means appealing to the reader's sense of what is logic. So you have to appeal to what's their logic. You want them to be like, doesn't this make sense? And by doing that, you provide them with the facts and evidence. The logos of an ad is straightforward. It tells you exactly what the product does, how it works, and or what it is used for. Much more useful in print or online ads due to time constraints. Because if you read an ad or you read an advertisement, you have time to provide in like statistically this is what it does, and you can also have different type of graphs inside of it. So we're going to watch the last video on logos. So here we go. We have an example.
The Davis twins are alike in nearly every way, right down to brushing their teeth. So how did only one get gingivitis? Well, 1 in 2 people do. So I told Karen about new Crest Pro Health Clinical Gum Protection Toothpaste. It helps eliminate plaque at the gum line, helping prevent gingivitis. It's even clinically proven to help reverse it in just 4 weeks. And it protects these other areas dentists check most. Looks like the twins are even again. New Crest Pro Health Clinical Toothpaste. Life opens up when you do.
So they gave us a lot of facts. We know why we should use it, what it does to your teeth. It appealed to logic and reason. So as we're getting ready to move forward, you think about ethos, pathos, and logos. Think about, what type of rhetorical device am I going to use today to get what I want?
Welcome back. You ready to solve this problem? This logic puzzle might look a little confusing at first, but it's actually pretty easy if you can think like a computer. If you think like a computer, you lay out all your possible options and then look at the rule that you're given and see what will work. So let's start with that. Let's lay out all our possible options of these three. What combinations can we have? We start with the dragon in the first one. We could have dragon, princess, and empty. We could have dragon and then switch the other two, empty and princess. We could start with the princess in the first one and have princess, dragon, empty. We could have princess, empty, dragon. And then lastly, we could start with this one being empty and have empty, dragon, and princess, and empty, princess, and dragon. So for 3 options, there are a total of 6 combinations that could possibly exist. So let's use our rule to figure out which ones will not work. So remember, only the sign above the princess is true. So why don't we start with putting the princess in this first cave. Let's see if we put the princess in the first cave, would this work? So we're going to be looking at these 2 options right here. Will these 2 work? So if the princess is in the first cave, then this is our true statement. The true statement that the third cave is empty. So that would make our third cave empty. If that's the case, then we can't have this option of princess, empty, dragon, because this is saying that that is true. So if this were the case, this option drops out immediately. Can we have the dragon in the middle then? You might think so at first because of the sign, but remember, only the sign above the princess is true. So for the dragon to be in the middle, the statement above it would have to be false, but the statement says there's a dragon in this cave. So this combination does not follow our rule and will not work. So it cannot be either of those. The princess is not in our first cave. So let's try putting the princess in the middle. Let's put our princess here in the middle and see if any of the rules follow it. So we have 2 options with the princess in the middle. This one right here and this one right here. So if we put the princess in the middle, before we even go to these combinations, we have a problem. For this to be true, the statement above it would have to be true. There is a dragon in this cave. No, there's not. There's a princess. So this contradicts our rule, and automatically we know we cannot have the princess in the middle. So we are going to lose these 2 options now. It's neither of those. This is how computers work. They look through all the possibilities until one solution fits. So now we're left with the princess being in the last. We know that this is absolutely going to be the answer. The princess is here, but which of the other 2 is our answer? So we know that this is our true statement. The middle cave is empty. That's the end. The middle cave has to be empty. We know the princess has to be here. This statement has to be true. The middle cave is empty. That would put our dragon in the first cave. Now we can double check if this works and make sure that our statements match. So this statement has to be false. There's a dragon in this cave. That's false. That cave is empty. The third cave is empty. That's also false because we know the princess is in the cave. So dragon, empty, princess is our answer. So again, this might have looked confusing and difficult at first, but if you break it down into all its little pieces and parts and just look at it logically, step by step, you can come up with the answer. I have one more challenge for you. All right, here's a challenge for you to think about today, see if you can figure it out. You have 2 stamps, 3-cent stamps and 11-cent stamps. You actually have an infinite amount of these. You can use as many of them as you want, but they are only 3 cents and 11 cents each. If you wanted to mail out a 6-cent letter, what would you do? Well, you would use 2 3-cent stamps, right? Pretty easy. But could you mail out a 7-cent letter? No, there's no way we could make 7 cents with only 3-cent and 11-cent stamps. Could you make an 8-cent letter? Nope, can't make that either because I can only make 3, 6, 9, or any combination with 11. So you see I'm already running into denominations or combinations or prices that I can't make with only these stamps. So my challenge to you is this. What is the largest amount that you cannot make? So the largest amount you can't make. Sound easy? Give it a try. See, start building up your prices and see if you can figure out what the largest amount is that you can't make. You might be surprised by what the answer is. Good luck and work on your problem solving skills. And if you think you got the answer, feel free to email it or text it to me. My information will be on the next slide. Good luck. Hi everybody, I'm Miss Makita from MC Squared STEM High School, and I'm here today to do a lab with you that you can do at home just with some really basic stuff you might have. We're going to learn a little bit about a concept called osmosis. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But for this experiment, all you will need is gummy bears or some other gummy candy, so gummy worms would work really great here. And you just need water, salt, and sugar. All you'll need to do is fill a cup about halfway with plain water, fill another cup about halfway with water and salt, and then fill another cup about halfway with water and sugar. Make sure you mix your salt water and your sugar water solutions, and then take gummy bears, pick a couple of the same color, and put 1 or 2 into each of them. You're going to be monitoring the changes that happen to these gummy bears due to something called osmosis. Over the course of even a few hours, you'll start to see changes. You can watch it over the course of a day. I ran my experiment for both 1 day and 2 days. So I had 6 cups. I had 1 for the 1-day experiment, 1 for the 2-day experiment, so that I could really see the changes in these. However you do it, you will see some change. Take a watch and listen, learn a little bit about osmosis, and see if you can make predictions of what's going to happen to these gummy bears over the course of that 1 or 2 days soaking in these 3 different liquids. So in order for us to make some predictions about what's going to happen in our experiment, we need to know a little bit more about a term called osmosis. When we're talking about osmosis in water, what we're talking about is the movement of water between 2 things. So in this case, I have this diagram and it's got 2 sides, and on the left-hand side, I have a whole bunch of little water. Water is going to be represented by the blue. On the right-hand side, I have less water, and I have this green stuff. In this case, the green stuff is going to represent the sugar. So our gummy bears, as you know, are not very wet. The water's been removed from them in the process that they were made, and they are very sweet. So this side is going to represent our gummy bear. When we talk about there being a lot of water, we call this concentration. This is a high concentration of water. And on the other side, obviously we have a low concentration of water. Osmosis happens when water moves from an area of high concentration to low concentration across something called a semi-permeable membrane. A semi-permeable membrane. Let me write that down. Now, a semi-permeable membrane is a word that means kind of like a wall that some stuff can get through, but not everything. In this case, the membrane is the gelatin structure of this gummy bear. Water can get in and out of it, but the sugar is too big to move in and out of it. So our sugar is not going to be moving, but our water is. In nature, everything tries to balance out. Osmosis is a simple natural occurrence of things balancing. When you have a lot of water on this side, a high concentration of water, and a low concentration of water on this side, naturally this water is going to want to move into this. This is osmosis. Osmosis is water moving across a semi-permeable membrane to try and even itself out, to even out the concentration. It's kind of like if you're in a really, really crowded room and there's some doors and you have the opportunity to go into the other room, and you're going to walk over until you have about as many people on both sides and your concentrations are equal once we reach something called equilibrium. It's all nature's trying to do is be in equilibrium. So can you use that idea of osmosis, thinking about putting these gummy bears in water, sugar water, salt water, and seeing what happens to them? Make some predictions and let's find out. All right, it's time to take a look at the results of our experiment. Did you make any predictions about what might happen? We had gummy bears soaking in plain water, in salt water, and in sugar water, both for 1 day and 2 days. I took the mass of the gummy bears, just plain. They're 2.8 grams a piece. And based on osmosis, we should have expected that the water would move into the gummy bears. Remember, water moves from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration of water. So in this case, out of our regular water, maybe our salt water, maybe our sugar water, into our gummy bears. Let's look at them and find out. We're going to take the mass of each of them as we do this. So we're going to start with our water, the gummy bear that was just in water, the green one, for 1 day. Let's take a look at what it looks like. Ooh, can you guys see that? It is definitely bigger, definitely squishier. Let's take the mass of it. 7.5 grams. Our new gummy bear is 7.5 grams. So it definitely took on some water. This proves our idea of osmosis. Let's take a look at it after 2 days. And I can tell you one thing, it is starting to look a lot less like a bear and more just like a gooey blob. You can almost not even see its legs. So take the mass of this one, 10.5 grams. So after 2 days, we took on an additional, 3 more grams of water into this, thus accounting for why it looks so blob-like. All right, let's take a look at our bear that was in salt water. So after 1 day, still pretty much looks like a bear. A little bit bigger for sure. Noticeable difference though from the bear that was in just plain water, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. Let's take its mass, 6.3 grams. Okay. So the size and mass are smaller than before. Okay. And let's take a look at our salt water gummy after 2 days. I accidentally used a different color here. You'll have to excuse me. Okay. By looking at this, it actually looks about the same size as the day before, but definitely less like a bear. So it is changing. Let's see if its mass changed at all. 6.1. Very interesting. So we actually had water move into it and then water move out of it by day 2. All right, and our last one is our sugar bear. So sugar bear, sugar water bear, poses an interesting question. We had water that already had sugar in it, so if it was going to move into the bear, it would still have to mean that the bear had more sugar in it than the sugar water. So our water concentration had to be higher on the outside than the inside, and we can prove that it was because the bear took on water. What do you think would happen if we were able to put this gummy bear in a sugar water solution that had more sugar in the sugar water, concentration of it, than in the bear? What do you think might happen? Let's take this bear's mass, 8.1 grams. 8.1 grams after 1 day. Very interesting. Okay, and then finally, let's look at our sugar water bear after 2 days. Whoa, That is a big glob. Okay, let's take his mass. 9.9 grams. 9.9 grams. So we were still taking on more water by day 2. So as you can see, all of our bears grew, and by grew we mean they took in water through osmosis. Which one took on the most water through osmosis? The one that had the highest concentration of water on the outside. There was nothing else mixed in with our water here, so we had the most concentration of water in our cup of water here. In the salt and the sugar water, there was obviously a higher concentration of water on the outside of the bear than the inside, but there was also all this other stuff mixed in with the water, okay, causing that difference in concentration to be lower than it was here. So this is an experiment you can do with any type of gelatinous candy, so gummy worms, gummy bears, things like that. But what would be a really interesting thing to try and do at home is to see if you could figure out a way to shrink the bears. There is a way to shrink the bears. All 3 of mine grew, but there is something you can do with osmosis that shrinks the bear. I challenge you to try the experiment yourself. See if you can figure out what combination of liquids will make that happen. You should absolutely look it up on the internet if you want to find out a little bit more. And, you know, I just did about 1 cup of water with about a tablespoon of salt and sugar. Another interesting thing to see would be what would happen if I did 2 tablespoons of salt or sugar, or 3. Changing those concentrations of those solutions is going to change what happens in your experiment. And you don't need a scale to be able to measure them. It's something that we could just eyeball and take a look at and see what's happening to the gummy bears. So this is a really easy experiment you can do at home, and the best part is you're not going to use your whole bag of gummy bears, so you can eat the rest. Good luck!